Welcome back to this special series of symbolic expression on Gandhian perspective. I'm Pooja Sharma and my co-presenter Manisha Sharma. We are presenting on energy security and energy transition, a Gandhian perspective. In the earlier session, we had presented about the energy security concept and how energy security can be addressed from the Gandhian perspective and thoughts of J.C. Kumarappa and Gandhi. In this lecture, we visualized energy security in the decentralized setting. The lecture will comprehend, you will be able to comprehend the characteristics of decentralized system of electricity, present the case study of energy security of communities which are based on Gandhian perspective. So the case studies will be presented here. Present the energy transition model, which is totally based on Gandhian perspective. Energy security and decentralization. In the earlier lecture, we had talked about the centralized system and the challenges associated with the centralized system and how the transmission losses and distribution and commercial losses, they affected the distribution system. The challenges related to availability, affordability, we had discussed them under the centralized settings. Now we are going to see how energy security and decentralization is all about. A system of generation of energy resources which is near to the place it would be used, instead of getting the generated by a large plant from the area that requires energy access, and it is grid connected. Basically what it means, a decentralized system, what it means is that the generation of energy source is near to the place where it is actually consumed. It is not like a centralized system where the large plant is is located at a place which is far away from the place end users, the place where you are actually using the electricity, and it is connected by the grid. So therefore, there is a huge difference between a decentralized system of energy sources and the centralized system. All the plants are connected to the distribution network rather than the transmission network in the case of decentralized system. Energy security, such a system which reduces the transmission losses, and it strengthens the energy security by supplying the electricity to the places which are not grid connected. So in the centralized system, grid is the main key. If you want to see the accessibility, you cannot have it without the grid. So grid system is the basic infrastructure, which is the preliminary infrastructure required for a centralized system. Here the grid is not a preliminary criteria. Despite of high initial cost of decentralized setting, in the long run decentralized setup, it can prove to be competitive. It can be a competitive network leading to stable prices, because the argument which is thrown is that it becomes costly to provide a decentralized setting of energy system because of cost. It involves a huge cost. But in case when you take it in the large scale and long run, decentralized will be a cost effective, and there are many research associated with it. The emerging market for decentralized energy products and services have been recognized, and they need the support of the institutional arrangements. They are like panels, solar panels, wind electricity, and there are many other decentralized settings which can have different products and services requirement, but they can easily be provided by the institutional arrangements. This would rather imply that the training and skill development, warranty and assurance of the various schemes, reliable connectivity between the centers and decentralization of the micro energy systems. So this kind of a requirement of the facility and the basic infrastructure would be the key for establishing this kind of energy system which are decentralized. As a consequence of energy transition, the emerging energy sector is in such a framework is bound to bring expertise in the product and processes and design, the resources, the management, renewable technologies, and decentralized energy generation and distribution both, and to become a vital part, and that will remove away all the risks associated. More and more people will be engaged in such a business and such an investment, creating more employment opportunities, improving the standard of living people in the communities, and filling the supply gap which is prevailing in the centralized system. This is a very critical point, that the centralized system failed to provide access to the 100% access to the electricity. So such a decentralized system will fill in the gap of the centralized structure. Now, what kind of decentralized system are available? A family size biogas plant, then the solar lanterns and the solar home lighting systems, then solar water heating systems, then solar cookers, standalone solar biomass based power generation. Then under the Akshay Ujjwala Aditya scheme, the solar shops, then wind pumps, micro hybrid plants. These are various decentralized system and energy systems available. They empower the whole community and the society. They empower the region, making them self-sufficient and self-reliant. So, and the entire system is under their control. They do not have to look for their energy requirement anywhere else. Now, determinants of such a new energy system, decentralized system, there are four critical factors which will determine the energy system which is decentralized. First of all are the resources, then the technology associated with the decentralized system, then the expertise, and then definitely the demand side. The pattern of the demand, the consumption pattern basically. So four factors clearly determine the decentralized energy system. One needs to have resources, first of all. The other one is the technology. If technologically, if you are dependent on others, on the other's country or a region or a state, then you will not be self-sufficient. For the expertise and the skills, again you need to be self-sufficient, you need to empower yourself as far as the skills are concerned, and you should be self-motivated and self-sufficient in that. Not depending on the skill for import and other things, etc. Another thing, the thing is that demand side, which we have already talked of. The pattern of demand governs the adoption and deployment of such a new system, which is a decentralized system. So the pattern also depends upon your individual behavior of energy consumption, which should be conscious and which should be environmentally and socially conscious thought. Now, looking at the transmission and distribution losses associated with this kind of system, it will definitely reduce transmission and distribution losses, because the energy source where the production of energy is being conducted or is being generated, it is located next to you, and there are no transmission grid required. You consume and produce your own, and then a very important aspect is the carbon emissions associated with such a system are minimal. It provides employment facilities, it engages all the members in the society, and it provides the sense of achievement as well as their independence, energy independence and self-sufficiency. So, and then locally people and society is empowered. Once you are getting electricity on your own, then there are scope for other developments and creating more opportunities, such as empowering education, knowledge base, increasing the skills, and other type of activities also take over when you have electricity which is being generated by yourself and on your own. So the emerging market for decentralized energy products and services, they have to be recognized and they have to be supported by the government and various institutions. This would further imply that training and skill development programs should be taken over under various schemes by the government, connecting different centers at regional level, local level, international level and central level, and thus creating a whole stakeholders, the symbiosis of stakeholders, which will make this kind of a system more and more successful. Energy security and will be then addressed as a consequence of energy transition. The emerging energy sector is in such a framework is bound to bring expertise in these kind of products and services, and it becomes a vital part when it comes to distribution and management of such a system. Then the management and distribution is not in the hands of few people. It is not the responsibility of only state or only government or only center. It becomes the responsibility of each individual who is using the electricity. Each person, each society, each community who is producing and using is responsible for the end product also, its management also. So everybody is taken care of, everybody is responsible, and the element of corporate social responsibility is already embedded in it. Then more and more of people will be engaged in the business as the various opportunities will be created, and improvement of standard of living and filling up of that gap has already been filled up. Now, to quote such a system, one of the fundamental example, one of the remarkable example which we can quote here is Island of Peace, which is also called as Community of Arc, which was founded in 1948. Now, the coincidence that this community is in France, and by Lanza de Vasta, he was between 1910 to 81. So, under his leadership, this community was a remarkable example that is based on Gandhian thoughts. If you look at this community, it represents a self-sufficient community, and which is also associated with a self-sufficient energy system, which is effectively based on the renewable form of energy system. They use firewood cut from the community's forest, and it is also used, that wood is also used for indoor heating and water heating and cooling. So they do not rely on the state's provision of electricity. They are self-sufficient, they produce their own electricity, and they do all productive and activities and all the economic and social activities using their own electricity and energy systems. The community uses categorically energy saving approach using electricity, while candles were also there used in the indoor lighting, and they use different without refrigeration. They use various methods of refrigerating which do not have to be dependent on electricity. So they have their own designed refrigerating systems, and they are local and indigenous systems. The community also uses another indigenous technique like water powered sawmills to generate their electricity. So they have designed their own techniques to generate electricity from water, to heat up their houses, to carry on various activities by using their own indigenous systems, by using wood of the forest, which is again recycled and renewable. So such a system, which there are examples, more examples in India also. Some of the examples you can quote from Wardha and various tribal areas which we know they belong to MP, then they belong to Assam. These tribal areas, they have their own energy systems which they're functioning and they do not bring to the grid. So the motivation and the drive of following such a system is the key. that if you really from the core they want to be sustainable, and you need a system which is in your hands and for which you are not dependent on the vested interests of people, and you want to be free in terms of energy dependency and energy requirement, then such a system is the most remarkable system. When you look at the energy transition, as this chart on the screen is showing, that for the economic development, if we use the centralized system which is based on fossil fuels and a conventional type of energy system, it leads to emission and climate change. As you can see, the arrows are moving. But if you want to be renewable and you want to convert and undergo the energy transition, it will be through your renewable sources of energy, and that you can see that this renewable energy source can be launched in two ways. It can be through the centralized system and can be through the decentralized system. Now, if again you will fall into the same trap if you follow the centralized system, there's so many challenges and handicaps associated with the limitations associated with centralized system. Concentration of power in hands of few. You have to depend on a few people, elite class group, and you will see the vested interests. You will see the political economy impact and thus the whole of political economy, the voting system and everything will be hands of the few people. But if you follow a decentralized system, you will be more empowered. You will have an employment of your own. You will be able to provide employment opportunities and more skill enhancement property opportunities to the community people of your own community. So such a system will lead you to a self-sufficiency and a non-violent economy set up, a society which is peaceful, which is not under the conflict, which takes into account, which is inclusive, which takes into account in demands of every individual, and it also provides benefits to every individual. While in a violent economy where your power in the hands of the state or the center, and you need to look up at the center for all the requirements and all the needs, where the center is not aware about the local arrangements and local requirements, where the center is not aware about the where the benefits are accruing to which person and to all the persons or not. So this kind of a monetary system and the administration and monitoring is not done. So such a system will lead to concentration of power, greed, violence, and it will lead to a violent economy. So when you talk about energy transition under the Gandhian framework, energy transition towards renewable and the clean energy is technologically dependent process, and it is a fact which all the developing countries should address and register, that it is a technologically driven process, technologically dependent process. Fostering and promoting the niche indigenous technologies will only generate a non-violent and employment-oriented economy. Like if it is from the bottom-up approach, and if it is transition is introduced at the indigenous level and at the local power, empowering each community to adopt their own energy system, the choice should be given to the communities, but also construct an energy secure nation. Energy transition can be visualized in two ways, which is centralized and decentralized. In terms of energy transition, achieving the security, a decentralized system empowers local communities, regional societies, making them self-reliant and independent, while a decentralized system also entails the setting more conducive environment for the human resource development, because it will encourage skill enhancement and promote the research and development also. So one kind of success in any kind of indigenous technology will lead to more and more of improvisation of the technology. They will do their own research and get motivated. Developing nations lack they lack capital, lack of R&D, lack of skills and human resources. So they fall short of indigenous renewable energy technologies. So this makes developing countries technologically dependent altogether. This gives impetus for developing nations to continue their own indigenous clean energy technologies, catering to their own needs. So this is the message which is to be given, that you need to be self-reliant and self-dependent for your own needs, and your indigenous technologies should be empowered more. So India has already committed in the Paris Agreement that it has already been walking on the path of clean energy transition, and this calls for energy transition becomes inevitable for India and other developing nations. So non-violent and sustainable economy is what every country is looking for. So it was argued that decentralized system will provide a non-violent and sustainable aspect of the economy by empowering the local communities. Several weaknesses we saw in the lecture, that they are associated with the centralized settings of which leads to the violent economy, full of elements of greed, competition and concentration of hands, and then power in the hands of only few, and there is a quest of power to this kind of and it leads to hegemony, supremacy over others, and then later on to conflict and larger warfare and etc. Globalization has again instigated this kind of a competition for power and concentration of the economic power. So this leads to all violence, which we have always been against in the Gandhian perspective and Gandhian thoughts. So this particular by this particular study and this particular lecture, it is proposed that the bottom-up approach is the key solution, or it is the key policy that should be motivated and recommended by adopting a decentralized framework along with the top-down. It is not to say that bottom-up approach is the only possible way, and it cannot happen without the corresponding top-down approach. Top-down approach is actually needed along with the bottom-up approach, but the motivation should be that individual societies and the communities must be made free from the dependency. However, this particular study proposes a top-down to foster and strengthen the bottom-up approach. So this was all regarding the energy transition and how the energy transition can be seen and can be viewed from the perspective of Gandhian thought, and how it should be visualized. So thank you so much for your attendance. Thank you so much for the patience. Bye-bye.